In spite of Vince McMahon's personal taste, tag team wrestling is, and should always be, a treasured and fundamental part of every wrestling show. It offers a far different dynamic to a singles match. The comebacks don't build to a fight from underneath, but to a fire from the partner on the outside, followed by a pantheon of pops for the inevitable hot tag before the face runs wild on the heels, who spent the bulk of the battle cutting the ring in half. Unlike so much in professional wrestling, it follows a strict science to forward sensation and scintillation rather than safety. Crucially though, it allows half-finished professional wrestlers a chance to look like the total package. The likes of the Hart Foundation, the Outsiders and Team Hell No were so successful together because each partner offered an extremely different piece to the puzzle, and when you put them together, the two halves made a whole. It allows for the best of both worlds, and it allows two wrestlers to pull their wagon in their own direction for the betterment of their union synergy. That is, unless of course one of the partners isn't holding up their half of the bargain. Number 10, Bray Wyatt. Bray Wyatt's recent return as The Fiend has worked hard to erase all of the bad memories from the Eater of Worlds' difficult and depressing run on the main roster. However, his final failure before his 2018 disappearance somehow managed to find misfortune in one of wrestling's lucky charms. With the advent of the Broken Universe in Impact Wrestling, Matt Hardy managed to not only transform and revive his own career, but drag along with him the dead wrestling lives of others. His flailing brother Jeff was reimagined as Brother Nero, redefining the Hardy Boys as a tag team and securing their path throughout all of wrestling that led them to an instantly iconic WWE comeback at WrestleMania 33. Tired acts like the Rock and Roll Express were welcomed into the Hardy compound, where they were given paydays that got them back into the wrestling zeitgeist. Hurricane Helms had a little swim in the lake of reincarnation, and it revived his career and his character as the Hurricane, so much so that it would see him rehired by WWE. It was magic, it was weird, and it was wonderful. But as usual, magic didn't work for Bray Wyatt. Despite a big comeback pop during the WrestleMania 34 pre-show, the Deleters of Worlds were ultimately a comedy act akin to the B-Team or the Braun Strowman-Nicholas pairing the second they had become Raw Tag Team Champions. Bad matches and risible comedy marked the end of the original Bray Wyatt's run, and all the momentum that Matt Hardy and the Broken gimmick had built up over the years was well and truly gone. Number 9, Wesley Blake. Now, not to put this entirely on Wesley Blake, but as it stands, the Forgotten Sons aren't exactly setting the world alight in NXT by any means, and it's looking increasingly likely that yet another one of his partnerships is not going to achieve the kind of lasting success and acclaim that I'm sure he probably wants. The same, however, cannot be said about his former associates Alexa Bliss and Buddy Murphy. Once a fairly solid unit on the developmental brand, the trio was separated just ahead of Alexa's 2016 main roster call-up, foreshadowing a total dissolution of the tag team in 2017. Bliss rapidly ascended up the ranks in the burgeoning SmackDown Live women's division, while Buddy Murphy would eventually make the literal leap into the wider consciousness with a thrilling stint on 205 Live. Dubbing himself the best kept secret, Murphy molded his new persona on the idea that he'd been held down by the company and held back by his doubles work, tactfully suggesting that Blake was somewhat of a hindrance towards his pocketed potential. Number 8, CM Punk. Now, given how much he was on the wrong end of some deeply damaging booking, you can probably forgive CM Punk for being a bit of a toxic figure to be around, particularly around the plethora of lost up-and-comers who were in the company at that time. In stark contrast, ever the optimistic tryhard, Kofi Kingston was less than a year into his 11-year journey to winning the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 35. Up to this point, Kofi Kingston had travelled in the opposite direction to Punk, but tagging with the infamous Chicagoan left him stuck in the mid-card mud for the first time in his blossoming career. Punk would suddenly find himself propping up Kofi Kingston's young career after doing an unfortunate reverse diesel over the course of 12 fairly difficult months, to be quite perfectly honest. What's a reverse diesel, I hear you ask? Well, let me explain. Kevin Nash's WWE career sprung into life after the Royal Rumble 1994. By April, he was the Intercontinental Champion. By August, he was wearing a tag team title alongside Shawn Michaels at the same time. And by November, the secondary straps were long gone, and Nash was flattening Bob Backlund for the industry's richest prize in Madison Square Garden. By comparison, Punk's June World Heavyweight title run abruptly came to an end in September, with this and an Intercontinental title run both coming within the next 4 months. On a bit of a downward slide, he was the wrong guy for Kofi Kingston to be linking arms with, and following this, Kingston wouldn't manage to reverse his own subsequent slump until late 2009. Number 7, HIDEO ITAMI. Now then, if you're following HIDEO ITAMI's return to New Japan Pro Wrestling as Kenta in 2019, then you'll know he spent his majority of the time there kicking the holy hell out of any fleeting memories that fans may have of his stuttering time at WWE. His stints in both NXT and 205 Live were snakebit, with a series of badly timed injuries booking misunderstandings, and a gradual disinterest between both competitor and company, any real chance of ITAMI becoming a star in WWE was a distant memory. Bizarrely, however, it was the mesmerizing presence of one of his pals that put the first and biggest nail in the coffin of HIDEO ITAMI. ITAMI's NXT introduction was framed around him trying to fight Big Bastard's The Ascension all by himself. A dangerous weapon of a man, he fared well against his rivals one-on-one, but the numbers game would eventually start to get the better of him. As a result, the developmental brand's latest signing from Japan came to make the save, and with his new best friend Finn Balor by his side, HIDEO ITAMI looked like he was ready to tear apart the former NXT Tag Team Champions. That is, of course, until he was overshadowed and overwhelmed by a certain demon. Ahead of the match, Corey Graves summed up the stakes for the newcomers on commentary. Solidify they belong here or go home. Finn Balor managed to secure the former so profoundly with his alter ego that unfortunately, ITAMI probably would have been better if he'd just accepted the latter then and there. Number 6, Dolph Ziggler. I mean, as if comparisons to the Heartbreak Kid hadn't hampered Dolph Ziggler's career enough to this point, WWE decided to pair him with Drew McIntyre as the next incarnation of Diesel and HBK, the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels. I mean, what were they thinking at this point? This cannot have been the new lease of life that Dolph Ziggler would have been looking for. Cute physical cues between the pair, McIntyre playing endless protector, Ziggler having more of the singles matches to build to the tag main events, and Drew literally carrying Dolph back to the dressing room on more than one occasion, told the real story of who WWE hoped to have in their main events when this alliance was all said and done. The two were soldier on despite the obvious damage that was being done to Drew, and after a painfully forced trio with Braun Strowman in order to provide a match for the Shield, WWE somehow managed to make matters worse upon their eventual split. Ziggler would end up getting the better of his far superior partner in a mundane 50-50 feud that came at the worst possible time of the year. Both men would find themselves ice cold heading into Royal Rumble and WrestleMania season, a far cry from their white-hot summer run with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose just months earlier. Number 5, Tamina. Now, it's hard to ignore the profiling at play in the Nia Jax and Tamina pairing. Their Samoan heritage was all that WWE needed to put the two together, and this was long before there was ever a women's tag division in the company. Unfortunately, it may well have sabotaged the singles career in the process. With 9 years on the main roster under her belt, it's safe to assume habitual second fiddle Tamina won't ever break out on her own as a singles star. Nia Jax, however, still might. The former NXT star has appeared on the card of every WrestleMania since her 2016 call-up, including a slightly problematic 2018 Raw Women's title reign that started and ended with a bullying storyline worked backwards alongside Alexa Bliss. It's been mixed fortunes for the Irresistible Force since then, including double surgery on both knees after a double ACL tear, but it's clear to see that WWE still want to get her over as one of the biggest stars in the women's division. Nia Jax is as close now to reaching her prime as she's ever been, and her 2019-2020 return from injury should probably rip the plaster off on this split too. Number 4, Hawk. Hawk's meandering and maniacal promo style at the peak of the Legion of Doom's powers in WWE was far from all talk. The man behind the makeup, Michael Hegstrand, had a wild side that at times significantly impacted the life and career of iconic partner Animal during their various runs with Vince McMahon. Things were never as tense between the tag team legends and the chairman of the board as they were in the summer of 1992. The acrimonious departure of Hawk cost his tag team partner years of work in the only role he'd ever really known, not to mention all the wages that it would have cost him too. Spending much of the year dodging WWE's increasing drug and alcohol testing, Hawk dogged his shift in their SummerSlam 1992 scrap with Money Inc. before walking out of the company and his prolific partnership. Briefly teaming with Crush in the aftermath, Animal was deemed surplus to requirements soon after, and the team wouldn't work together for nearly 4 years as a result. Hawk left for Japan to form the Road Warrior knockoffs, the Hellraisers, holding down singles and double stints in New Japan Pro Wrestling, ECW and WCW before finally reuniting with his former tag team partner Animal on Nitro in 1996. Hurt by his partner's erratic decision making, Animal didn't work at all between that return and his disappointing WWE exit. Number 3, Cody Rhodes. After their critically acclaimed 5-star bloodbath at All Elite Wrestling's Double or Nothing, Cody told sibling Dustin, "I need my older brother," asking for his help ahead of a Fight for the Fallen main event against the Young Bucks. Their classic matchup was as much about proving WWE wrong as it was about proving each other right, but their match actually had some echoes from a similar babyface run they had against the Authority in 2013. It was here where Cody would first show signs of the solid all-rounder he had the potential to become, but meanwhile he was being overshadowed by the incredible resurgence of brother Goldust. 16 years his senior, Goldust's final return to the company for the angle proved to be the most fruitful bell-to-bell. He was sublime as a babyface, timing his comebacks and survival strategies with such innate precision that his younger brother, the supposed primary recipient of the push, was instead something of an anchor. With that confusing chemistry, the team weren't long for the world. Certainly not as long as they should have been anyway. But a Goldust and Stardust reimagining managed to kill off all of their heat, as well as Cody's interest in working for WWE. Number 2, Seth Rollins. A recent SummerSlam conference call turned into Twittergate number 2 for Seth Rollins. Jesus Christ, when is this man going to learn his lesson after he was asked to make comment about the post-WWE career of former partner Dean Ambrose? Now, it's easy not to feel that much sympathy here for the Beast Slayer after his misguided prods at Will Ospreay and company critics at large during a bizarre Twitter outburst earlier this year. The roots of his rage seem somewhat confused, with his main point of consternation centered around just how hard on the body and mind it is to be a WWE superstar. Seemingly ignorant to the subcontext of his words, Rollins has managed to turn even some of his loyalist fans against him recently. Where still his character and performances have been completely crippled by WWE's lack of creative vision. That all sounds rather familiar, doesn't it? It sounds just like what happened to Dean Ambrose right before he broke away from the company to become one of 2019's most vital pro wrestlers. Jon Moxley's reinvention exists, of all places, on the WWE Network. Through their brilliant Chronicle series, WWE's own cameras shot his injury layoff and emotional unraveling that informed his thirst for a fresh start. Unfortunately, Ambrose's summer comeback was designed entirely to serve the needs of his Shield brother, Seth Rollins. The whole thing was doomed from the very start, despite the incredibly promising and badass return of Dean Ambrose. Ultimately, it would be a gas mask and a few vaccination shots later before the lunatic fringe's career in WWE would be over. But hey, what are you gonna do? Best pro wrestling on the planet, right, Seth? And number 1, Seth Rollins. A damning on-screen partnership for both that ended in disaster following Seth Rollins' loss to Brock Lesnar. The exploitation of a real-life romance between the Architect and Becky Lynch did much to chip away at the previously unshakable aura of the man. Despite the pair only recently making their relationship public, Rollins and Lynch were forced together on WWE TV in an effort to try and resuscitate and redeem their flailing post-WrestleMania programs against Baron Corbin and Lacey Evans respectively. To his partial credit, Rollins subverted WWE's systemic sexism by taking a backseat to his sharpshooting better half. But this was the weakest Lynch had been made to look since defeating Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 35. The Universal Champion wasn't looking towards Corbin, but over his shoulder for the Lesnar cash-in that eventually came. Where still some pointed digs from Evans and Corbin, who somehow had better on-screen chemistry than Seth and Becky did at times, managed to actually come true in the end, particularly for Becky Lynch. Having to contend with Seth's plight and his incredibly off-the-mark promos, the man was being well and truly thrown off her game. Even Seth's social media misfires seemed to be contagious, as Lynch's once untouchable Twitter persona took a partial wobble. Thankfully, the end of their Corbin-Evans feud seems to be, for now at least, also the end of their on-screen tag team. So that's it. That's our list on all of the tag team partners who held their fellow partner back. But I'm sure you've probably got a ton more who you can think of. So let us know those in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and share. Hit the old subscribe button if you haven't already. You can find the original article for this on whatculture.com/WWE. That's by Michael Hamflet. It's a bloody good read. You can follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. You can follow me on Twitter at It's Adam Nicholas. Or if you just want some more videos, there should be some just here. I'm Adam Nicholas, and I will see you next time.